What is up, YouTube? It is Docky or Docky Style Gaming, and I am back at it with another GodFall video for you all today, because once again we got a bunch of brand new information from a Gamespot article, and thanks to the creative director Keith Lee. And this article actually dropped a bunch of brand new information about customization, our own home hub, a couple other game modes as well, and just a bunch of information. So I'm gonna hop straight into it and pretty much read it kind of word for word. Most of the stuff I'm going to cover is the important aspects. He also talked about the PS5 and then the different tech aspects of the DualSense controller. I'm going to leave that out, but I will leave the article in the video description if you want to check out the entire article and in its entirety. But for the most part, I'm just going to be covering the new information and the most important parts of the information that we got from this article. Now, the first part of the article, he was talking about the vision and their idea when coming to creating GodFall and its gameplay. Now, what he initially said was the vision for making this game was how we came to merge the looting with the third-person melee combat, getting real juicy, tight combat mechanics, the movement, the moment-to-moment flow, and that experience, because a lot of people on our team love skill-based action RPG titles. Yet, there are also people on the team, given our background having worked on Diablo and working at Blizzard, that have also loved for loot-driven action RPGs. They said, we love playing Borderlands, so really the original premise and the concept was, can we have a game where it is somewhere in the middle, meaning there's one part loot-driven as well as one part skill-driven. It is more like intrinsic mastery of the combat, while the loot is more of an extrinsic reward system for you to be motivated to play the game, which is definitely pretty cool in my opinion. They always talk about different inspirations that they get from this game, some being Monster Hunter World, which I think they do touch on a bit later in this video, Dark Souls too, so there's a bunch of different inspiration in this game, and they said they love playing Borderlands, and with Gearbox publishing, I guess it makes sense. Now, this next bit of info is actually probably one of the most important parts. I mean, there's a couple other things as well, but we actually get a bit more information about our characters and the Valorplates in particular. Now, in the article, we went on to say that mastering GodFall's broad combat system is going to be a big part of the experience, but that searching for more and better loot will be a part of the experience as well. It comes back to the Valorplates, the armor at the core of GodFall's gameplay, saying that there are 12 Valorplates for you to unlock as you play GodFall, each with its own specific set of stats and passive buffs for your characters, and an additional Archon ability. A Valorplate's Archon ability sounds pretty much like an ultimate in a game like Overwatch or a super ability in a game like Destiny 2. A unique, powerful thing that you can only use once it's charged up by a bard to unlock it. So because of the different stats and Archon abilities that each Valorplate offers, it sounds that they'll function much like classes. And then went on to say that you'll want to choose the right Valorplate for a given mission or your role in a group that you're playing cooperatively. Now, as I've said in a previous video when I was going over each of the Valorplate abilities, it looked like one of them might be a role-based ability. So it's interesting that they're talking about there being different classes and different roles in the game. I talked a bit about tank characters, DPS characters, and things like that. So if you haven't checked out that video, I highly suggest you do, because I went over all of the abilities that we've seen so far up till now in terms of gameplay, videos, trailers, things like that. Now, this next bit of information goes over the weapons, which we pretty much already know about, but there is a bit of extra information in it as well. So it says, apart from your Valorplates, you'll have other great gear to determine how you play as well. There are 5 different classes of weapons to factor into your loadout, offering different styles of combat, as well as augments that you can equip into your Valorplates to add different perks and stat changes. Now, as I've said in a bunch of my videos, the 5 different weapons that you'll be able to use in the game are polearms, your great swords, your long swords, your dual blades, and hammers. Now, potentially there might be more added later on, but as of right now, those are the 5 that we'll be able to play with at the launch of the game. Now, this next bit of information is interesting because it's very similar to another Gearbox game. Now, when they're talking about our characters and our levels, they said that your character has an overall level that you'll increase as you play. Now, rather than leveling up your individual Valorplates, increasing your level unlocks skill points that you can allocate on on a skill grid that you'll have for new abilities, which is kind of similar to, I guess, really mini looter shooters, but it reminds me of the skill tree that you have in Borderlands games, which again, with Gearbox publishing, makes sense. It then continues by saying, as in other loot-driven action RPGs, you'll find stronger weapons as you play, but you'll need to keep increasing your levels to access them, meaning some weapons will be level locked, sadly, but I mean, that's kinda what you should expect with most looter shooters as well. Now it says, if you find a weapon you like in particular though, you can use crafting materials to increase their power by upgrading them in the 7th Sanctum, your character's home base. So that is a bit of new information that we got as well. We did know that there was going to be crafting materials, but it's cool that that's how we'll be able to upgrade our weapons. Then we also got information on, I guess, our home base, the 7th Sanctum, which I figured there would be some type of hub area in the game, but this is the first information that we actually got on it as of right now. Now, there is a bit more that you can do at the 7th Sanctum as well, but I'll cover that a little later on. Now, Keith Lee went on to continue by saying, chasing loot in Godfall is perhaps a little less about looking for something with better numbers than what you're carrying, and more about finding things to customize your loadout to better match how you want to play and how you'll deal with different situations. And then he kind of went on to give an example of God of War as being similar to their loot system, saying where the loot is a little bit more specific, but then each loot piece is very meaningful and impactful if you slot it into your Valorplate or if you get a specific weapon. So that's been one of the big differences, is focusing on quote unquote quality of loot rather than pure infinite quantity of loot. The article then went on to continue and compare them as well, saying that the loot is similar to 2019's God of War or Devil May Cry 5, as opposed to other games similar to the Soulborn games. It says you'll be looking to control the battlefield, prioritize some enemies over others, and create combos. Now, this part of the article is pretty interesting because he goes over the enemy types and some other game modes that we'll be able to experience in the game as well. Now, the article does say Godfall includes more than 90 kinds of enemies. He says that there'll be a lot of potential for combinations coming at you, and learning to skillfully deal with them is a big focus of Godfall's gameplay. He then went on to say, the way that we've designed our combat pillars from the ground up when we first started designing in combat is that offense is greater than defense. So we really think about making sure that the player can get a feeling of offensive power fantasy. And then again went on to make another comparison saying, so most Soulborn games are much more defensive, meaning that you want to isolate. You want to do only a one-on-one. It's disadvantageous for you to fight two-on-one. It says you'll want to always be very systematic with how you play in general. While for us, we want you to feel like you can dominate and completely eviscerate your enemies if you know how to play, plus have the right gear and loadouts. So for us, we have a much broader spectrum of enemies with more variety, and as a result, we also embrace the many to one fights rather than the one-on-one fights. It then goes on to say that the idea of Godfall is that you're always pushing forward, prioritizing enemies, and leaning into your attacks. You'll still face tough one-on-one fights though, but it says Godfall is divided into missions that you'll choose from the 7th Sanctum along with your loadouts. It says story missions will have a mid and end boss that you'll face as you advance through Godfall's tale, while hunt missions will send you out to track down, learn about, and face bosses in particular. So we expect some big fights that are different from the many against one battles with enemies you'll fight along the way. And then he went on to continue to say that going after and taking down bosses is one of the big structural elements of Godfall, and that you can expect a whole lot of them. So a lot of bosses. If there's 90 enemy types, I can only imagine how many bosses or boss types there are in the game. Then he went on to say that story missions will have their own own set of bosses that are different from the ones that you'll seek out and destroy on hunt missions. All that is a part of your overarching mission to climb the Skybreaker's monolith at the center of GodFall and kill the mad god at the top. So with that, I think it's pretty dope that now we have essentially 3 different things that we'll be able to do in the game. Of course, we have our basic campaign story mode, we talked about the Tower of Trials, and now we have our hunt missions. Now again, I'm assuming there will possibly be way more, again, along with finding more loot in the game to better your characters, but it's interesting that we got a bit more information on other things to do outside of the base story or base campaign of the game. It's also interesting that they bring up the Skybreaker's monolith, which is something I've mentioned in my other videos as well. So again, if you want to check those out, I highly recommend you do. I have a playlist of all my GodFall videos, but it's interesting that that in fact is where the main villain is going to be. We got to see it in the very first trailer that was shown off what the Skybreaker's monolith was, and apparently that's where Macros, the main villain of the game, is. But like I've said in previous videos, it still seems like it opens the door for other enemies to potentially come through. Now, other things I do think were pretty interesting to take from this article are the abilities from the Valorplate called Archon abilities. Now, again, as I've mentioned in other videos, the 12 Archons are what created the Valorplates. So they made them in their images is what it said, lore-wise. So it makes sense that each of the Valorplates have abilities based off of the specific Archons that created their Valorplate. I just wonder how much that's actually going to play into the game, and again, hopefully we'll actually get to see the incarnation of those Archons or what represented the Valorplates that we'll be able to unlock in the game. Or maybe that's how we unlock them. We fight a different Archon and we unlock a new Valorplate based off its appearance. So again, there's still a lot of information that we still need to find out about the game, but what we got today was still a pretty decent chunk of new info that we've kind of been desperately needing. They've been kind of quiet for the past 2 weeks, so I'm glad that we finally got some brand new information. It's been a bunch of gifts so far on their Twitter page. So the fact that Gamespot got to get an interview with Keith Lee and he broke down a lot more information that, again, I'm sure he knew players are wanting to hear about, but again, giving us a bit of a tease on what more to expect from the game. So let me know in the comment section what you thought about all this information, what you're expecting from this game, if you think there's only going to be those 3 game modes, or what other modes are you wanting to see. So thank you all for watching. That's really all I got for this video. Like I said, there was a bit of other information, mainly talking about the PlayStation 5 solid state drive, DualSense controller, stuff like that. Again, if you want to check it out, links to this whole article will be in the video description, so you can read that if you want to. But other than that, that's really all I got. So links to all my social media accounts are in the video description. Like always, I will catch you all on the next one. Thanks for the love. Thanks for the subs. Peace.